We're all set?
Yep, we're all set.
Great. All right, well, my name is Bob Reed. I'm the interim town administrator, and thank you all very much for your attendance, your volunteering to be on this committee. As I mentioned earlier, some of you have been appointed by my predecessor, John Coderre. Some were appointed by myself. I thought that perhaps, I think you all have the materials that were sent out Tuesday, including an agenda. I thought the first thing that we would do is, before the election of officers, might be to go around and take attendance. I'm sure we have a quorum. It looks like everyone's here, but just to make it official, make it formal, if we could just go around. Do we have Aaron Hutchins? I don't know if you're on mute.
He looks like he's frozen.
Oh.
He hasn't moved in quite some time.
Aaron, if you can hear us, if you kill your video, it usually, there we go.
Aaron, have you been able to hear what I said previously?
I heard everything up until previous, or the agenda had been disseminated.
Okay, so we would just, before the organization, according to the agenda, I thought we would just go around the room and take attendance, make sure everybody was present and could participate. Dario Damari?
Here.
Okay. Judy Boyle?
Here.
William Pierce?
Here.
And was it Ashley Davis, Scott? You said wasn't able to make it?
That's correct.
Okay. And Linda Breckel?
It's Brenkel with an N.
Brenkel, sorry.
Here, no worries.
I guess that's all the members who are going to be present. We do have a quorum. With that, I can begin the election of officers. If you don't mind, I would take nominations for chair. Everyone went on mute.
I'll volunteer, but I can't nominate myself.
I'll nominate him.
Is that Bill Pierce?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Nomination's been made and seconded. Do we take a vote? Judy Boyle?
Aye.
Dario Damari?
You're on mute, Dario.
Aye.
Linda Brenkel?
Aye.
Aaron Hutchins?
Aye.
And Mr. Pierce, I think you can vote for yourself.
Yeah, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. I would suggest then continuing with the election of a vice chair, and hopefully someone, what I would like to do is have someone be the clerk to help take minutes, sort of take the load off staff. But with the election of Mr. Pierce, if you're comfortable, would you mind taking over the meeting as chair?
Certainly. So I guess the next thing we are going to do is, is Ashley. The next thing we will do is ask for nominations for a vice chair. I guess first questions first is anyone interested in being the vice chair? Don't everyone speak up at once.
Ashley, you're on mute in case you were going to speak.
I'll nominate Dario.
Oh, can I nominate Aaron?
I'll second the nomination for Dario. So all those in favor, Linda,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Dario,
Can I abstain?
You can abstain if you'd like.
Well, I
Aaron,
just don't know what it entails, but if it's not a lot of work, I'll do it because all
I think basically you're my backup.
right, I'll be a backup.
Okay.
Aye.
Aaron
Aye.
and Ashley.
Aye.
Okay, it's
Aaron and I
unanimous.
used to
I'm
be
an aye
friends.
as well. So Dario is our vice chair, and then Mr. Reed, you said we needed a clerk as well.
Well, that would be most helpful. If we had difficulty getting a vice chair, I somehow feel we're going to have difficulty getting a clerk.
I can nominate Aaron.
Oh, boy.
Anyone want to second that nomination?
But does Aaron want it? I'll second.
I will do my duty.
Okay.
We have a nomination and a second. Roll call votes. Linda,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Dario,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. That's very much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Let me just say, if the meetings are going to take place on Thursdays, it's going to be problematic for me. So hopefully this is a one-time exception.
Yeah, and I know that's further down in the agenda. We can definitely go over what's best. I know I have a limited summer schedule in August, and we sort of have a lot of information to review that we just got this week. So I don't, we may have to give it a month or so for everyone to sort of get caught up with everything that we've got. So I guess moving on, and this sort of rolls into the review of the study submissions. Bob, I don't know if you want to walk us through what's happened so far.
Sure. An RFQ was issued. We received some 3 proposals back. Icon Architects, HKT, and Bargeman Henry. You have in your packet also a cover memo from Becca Meekins, the Assistant Town Administrator, sort of explaining the process and the buildings that have been looked at and sort of were the background for the RFQ. Also some evaluation criteria. And I understand it's a lot of material. It went out Tuesday. That is a question of whether people are prepared to take any action now or if you need a little more additional time. The scope that was laid out in the RFQ was for the study of 4 buildings. This building here at 63 Main Street, the old town hall, which the town has just recently purchased. That transaction has happened, so it's now owned by the town. White Cliffs, 167 Main, and the present fire station. So right now there's a committee that's been formed. They have a clerk of the works and are looking at moving forward with the retention of an architect. So it's hard to say exactly when there's going to be beginning of construction, let alone when the present fire station at 11 Pierce Street is going to be available. But that is a building that we consider should be under consideration. So with that, we ask that the firms give us their backgrounds, their project team, their experience with similar projects. You have all that in the evaluation criteria. But again, I understand since everything went out, and it's a lot of material, and it went out Tuesday, if everyone isn't prepared to move forward with the evaluation, I think that would be understandable.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yep.
So, Mr. Reed, I did review the materials, admittedly not every detail, but sufficiently. And if my memory serves, we were supposed to have received sufficient proposals so that we had at least a minimum of 3 that we were going to advance. And since we only received 3, is there going to be another submission period, or are we just going to advance the 3? I mean, I know that the town employees apparently have reviewed things and only have recommended the advancement of 2 of the 3 firms. But in as much as we only have 3 submissions, is there a reason why we shouldn't advance all three?
No, I think that would be up to the committee. I think that we felt that our review and recommendation would be worthwhile, but it's only a recommendation. It's this committee's recommendations, and what happens with the submittals counts. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be up to the committee as far as who you bring in. By advance, do you mean the ones that you would bring in to interview?
Correct. I mean,
No.
assuming that's the next step.
Right. Yeah, that would be the next step.
So I think it would be up to the committee. If there was one or you didn't feel was really worthwhile, that would be up to the committee to determine. I don't think you're required to interview all three.
I mean, based on the submissions we got for the downtown master plan, and then the experience of interviewing them and how very different, they were in the interviews and the information we got, I feel like it's worthwhile if we're able to interview three to give them all a chance to kind of prove themselves in person.
Yeah, as I said, I think that would be entirely up to the committee.
And I would agree with that. I've actually worked with all three firms. We just finished working with BH+A. And they worked for us. We hired them to do a project, 192 units in Sharon. Icon's a pretty well recognized firm. And so was HKT. So I don't know why they were eliminated. If there was a real good reason, I guess that would make sense. But I think we go forward with three. And if it makes sense, we can certainly vote for who we want. And if they're gone, they're gone. But I think, to Aaron's point, keep three in the park until the game's over.
Well, so Mr. Chair, I guess I'd make a motion, if that's the appropriate administrative move here, that we take the time necessary for all the members of the committee to review the materials if they haven't done so already, but that we proceed for setting an interview schedule with all of the three submittees.
I'd like, at least for, I understand that first off, is there a second for that nomination?
A second.
Okay. I'm going to open up a little bit of a discussion here. So I'd still like to make sure that everyone has had a chance to thoroughly go over the proposals that we have. I do agree with you that all three should be invited in, and I have no problem with that. But I think before setting up a schedule, we should probably give everyone a chance to go over it, talk about these things amongst ourselves, and then set up a schedule for all three to come in, instead of setting up a schedule now and not having a conversation between ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a request. We have a second, so I'll open it up for a vote. Linda.
So the request is to bring three interviewees in.
First.
And so that's, I'd say aye for that.
But do that first instead of, let me clarify.
No.
Do that, we're doing that first instead of talking about it amongst ourselves first.
Okay, no,
Bill,
who's-
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, let me restate it. I didn't suggest that we were to interview them prior to our board discussing the submissions. I said that my motion was to set up an interview schedule for the three, whenever that interview schedule is. But the town employees recommended we only move two forward. We've had some brief discussion that we should move all three forward. I think we're all agreed on moving the three forward. So the motion was, let's set up an interview schedule, and whether that's 2 months down the road or whenever it is, let's get that in play. And if we need another meeting in the meantime to come back as a committee and discuss each of the submissions, that's fine. But it was not to interview them prior to coming back as a committee and discussing the submissions.
Okay, because that's not what the motion was. The motion was to set up an interview schedule, right? We still have on our agenda to set up our schedule. So what I would ask is maybe can we hold that motion until the end? I'm in complete agreement that I think all three should come in, right? But before we make a motion, making a motion means that's the next thing that's going to happen. So if you're stating that the next thing that's going to happen is we are going to set up an interview schedule, then that's what we're voting on. I understand intent sometimes is different than language, but that was your motion. Do you wish to withdraw your motion?
No, I think,
Okay.
I think that the motion can stand and we can set up our schedule and then set up the interview schedule.
So then the motion is to set up an interview schedule for all three interviewees. So Linda,
Um, I don't know, can we revise the motion?
Mr. Hutchins can definitely amend his motion.
Bob, do I need to amend my motion? Am I missing something?
I believe you can. I don't see any reason why not. If it's up to you.
No, I said, do I need to?
Well, I think that's up to the board. I don't see the harm in setting up a schedule.
So Aaron, I guess what I hear you saying is that you are in agreement that the interview should occur after the board has had a chance to discuss each of the organizations. As Bob is describing the motion, it's simply that the next thing that would occur would be interviews, which is not contingent on the board discussing the organizations first. So that seems to be the disagreement. So I don't know, would you revise your motion to say, set up an interview schedule to follow the board having an opportunity to discuss the organizations internally first?
Great, so revised.
Bob, do I need a second on the
Yes.
amendment? Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, roll call vote. Linda,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Dario,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay,
I'd also like to make a motion that, I don't know if this is the time for this, a motion or doing it correctly here, but that we receive input from the town committee regarding why they excluded the one company.
well, before we make motions, let's discuss it amongst
Okay.
ourselves. We don't, a motion means that we take a vote on it, right?
Okay,
That eliminates our ability, that limits our ability to discuss these things.
okay.
Right. So, let's talk about that. I do think even though we bring in the three, for interviews, I think the opinions of the town employees is something that we should definitely hear. But I'm open to other suggestions if somebody suggests that that's not the correct course of action.
No, I mean, all these things can happen before we make a final decision about who's chosen. So the discussion can happen before or after the interviews, and it can discuss both our review of the paperwork and the interview, results and the town responses. So I think, we don't have to get into technicalities on when we
Right.
hear all these things, because we still are going to have time to do that before we make the final decision.
Yeah. So I think in my head, and I've been through a few of these, right? So in my head, and please correct me if you think this is the incorrect way to go, but in my head, first we as a committee review the items, right? We come back to a meeting, we have a meeting to discuss them. Then we set up the interviews, right? We ask the same questions to all three interviewees, right? They make their proposals. Then we come back as a committee and we talk to the people like Mr. Reed, like Mr. Charpentier, like Mr. Thompson, and we say, okay, what are your ideas of those three after the interviews? And maybe Lori Connors, or there may be others that we may want to ask. And then at that point, that's when we get all of our information, and then we have a final meeting to be able to make our vote. Does that sound reasonable? Is there anything I'm missing?
Well, I would just say that it's completely up to you how much you do or do not take into consideration the input of staff. I think that what was forwarded to you, and I don't want to speak for Becca, but what was forwarded to you was our feelings about the submittals in viewing them. I think it was more just to be viewed as a help and to help narrow down the submittals. But again, as I've been saying, how this proceeds, what your schedule is going to be, who you call in, how you evaluate them, aside from the valuation criteria, is up to the board and or the committee, and how much you, I would say, put weight on the input of staff.
And Bob, did they, haven't had a chance to review the materials in much detail yet. Did they contain some detailed explanation as to why the staff did not recommend Icon?
Well, just
or why they did recommend the other two?
in speaking for myself, it was primarily based on experience in the number of relevant projects.
But was that was that included in the materials, that description of why various staff declined that company, included in the materials? Or just the recommendations for declining that company?
I only saw the recommendation.
Yeah, me too.
So, but again, we'll after we have the interviews, we'll open it up to staff and we'll see, we'll ask what their reasons were, right? If it was to help us to try to limit, the time that we have to spend doing this, then, that's fine. That's what staff does, is staff sort of helps the committees move along as quickly as possible. One question I do have when it comes to that though, Bob, is there a time frame or anything on this that we are up against? Like, do we have to have a decision in 6 months or something like that?
I don't believe so. Unless Scott has some input on this, but I would say not. I think that you need the time that you need to give this a proper deliberation and evaluation of the proposal.
Okay.
I mean, you may take time and have a particular firm that you want to deal with, and for whatever reason those negotiations might fall apart. I don't think that you should be under any time pressure. I think you should do what you feel is best.
Okay. Then what I would suggest as well is if we as a committee, after the interviews, can get down to 2, maybe we open it up for a public discussion as well, right? And get some public input.
I don't know what you mean by public input.
To open it up to allow the public a say. Is that something that's allowed, or?
Well, I would say that you would want to stick with the evaluation criteria. I mean, what weight would you give to public input in evaluating the proposals?
Well, there may be a particular building that the public may desire to have the town hall in or not. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. If that's not something that's normal for an RFP process, then that's fine.
I feel
I
like
think-
that might be something that would come later, right, Bob? Like if the consultants felt like we should include a public comment or something, they would look into that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that how you proceed and to the extent that you include public input really would be up to the committee. But yeah, to me, the public input stage is when you start looking at designs.
Okay, got it.
Did you,
So,
Scott, I don't know, did you want to, I was waiting for Scott's answer. Did you have, in terms of timing?
The responses are typically established for 60 days, but these architectural firms, I mean, there is no logistics associated with the timing for award here. This isn't like a construction bid package where there's critical timelines and milestones. So I don't see any of the consultants willing to withdraw or desiring to if it goes, 90 days. I don't think that's an issue. Not in a feasibility study.
The only risk that we have, which I've seen in the past, I think one of the most important things when you go through the evaluation is the person assigned to your project. I don't care how many building types any company does. If the individual working on it doesn't have that experience, then the company doesn't matter. And it really doesn't. And I say that with the timing part, because if now, their best guy, Aaron, is available, and in 2 months, he's put on another project, and we're stuck with Dario, that could really hurt us. And I'm not saying that would happen, but it's just, that's one of the only things that when we do this, and you don't want to get the bait and switch. You don't want, Tiger Woods coming up saying he's going to golf for us, and then we get his nephew. So that's the only thing that would come into play. So whoever does get this, and it's really the people on the project, not the company, that matters. And I promise you that. So that's the only thing that where timing could affect it. So, and I don't know that they would or would not be available in the future, but that's just something to keep in mind when we do go through. When we talk to them, say, would you be available, the same person for another month?
right. Okay. Good. So I guess if everyone's in agreement, let's start talking about our timelines. I know, like Mr. Rita said, we just got this information on Tuesday. Do we think? I know, Aaron, you said Thursdays were bad. Is there a day of the week that's better for you?
Just pretty much anything but Thursday. I have a standing meeting on Thursdays.
Okay.
That's
okay, and I know we have to sort of work around the town Zoom meetings as well. So, what about Wednesdays? So let's say like the 30th of August.
isn't that Labor Day weekend? Start of whatever.
I have
I
another
guess
meeting
it's-
that day.
Because
Oh,
it
you
depends
do.
on when you start your weekend.
Monday.
Yeah. Well, I would know. I would think, yeah, the week and the week after that is probably out as well, right? That's a short week with the Labor Day holiday. So maybe we go with a lucky September 13th. Would that work for everyone for our next meeting? That would give us plenty of time to look over everything, be ready for a discussion between us on what we think, and then, set up interviews. I would think starting maybe the beginning of October. Does that sound good with everyone?
Yep.
13th works for me.
For me,
Yeah, that works.
What time on the 13th? Same time?
Probably the same time, right? 7, I would think. That gives everyone a chance to get home, get something to eat before. Yeah, I know, Aaron. I wasn't looking forward to Thursdays either because that's the day I drive into Boston to go into work, and driving back home can be crazy if you're trying to get home for 6 or 7 o'clock. So I'm with you there.
All right, so I'll motion that our next meeting, if we need it, is 9/13 at 7 PM.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Linda,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Dario,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So that our next meeting will be September 13th at 7 p.m.
And the purpose for that meeting is to review the proposals.
Is to review the proposals for all 3 proposals for this board, and then the second is to set interview schedules for all 3 individual firms.
Dario, question for you in terms of setting interviews for these firms, or maybe Bob, I don't know who the question needs to go to. Is it something where we set the interviews and we give it to them and they just take it? Do we need to have a back and forth with these firms? How does this work?
When you're interviewing them, obviously they got to be able to say yes to the date. Typically, they know what we're going to talk about before they come in. And it'll be their proposal, the pluses, the minuses, and another big piece is to have the individual that will be assigned to our project there, so we can ask that person question, because that's the person you're working with for the duration of the project. Get that commitment, and any support members that'll be doing different parts of the service. We're going to hire ex-con to go do existing conditions. We're going to do this, so that it's not just a shill game. Just all the people doing all the work. And then they talk a little bit, you ask them to talk a little bit about their approach. And I think that's when you start to understand, when you ask questions, if they're stubborn or if they're cooperative or if they're creative, or if, that's a big deal. It's just getting to know who those players are. So those were usually done back in the day in person. If it's Zoom, it's Zoom. But you learn a lot sitting across the table from someone when you're asking questions, and if they really know the answers, or if they're looking to the person next to them or their cell phone or a laptop for the answers.
And
Yeah,
how is the timeline for the actual work determined? So in other words, in terms of who is going to be responsible for it within a given company, do
They
we?
propose a schedule based on our needs, and if it's not based on our needs, they propose a schedule on the directive we give them. We'd like it as soon as possible, or we'd like it by this date.
Okay.
And then they will give you a schedule, a scope and a time.
There was a schedule in the RFQ, but I always considered it very, very aggressive. But, as I said earlier, you need the time to do what you need to do. But to get back to the earlier question, I would imagine prior to your interviews, perhaps there would be a walkthrough. You can see what their responses were to the walkthrough, if they're ready to do any quick evaluations of the buildings. How much do they love your project, I think is important. As Dario said, how enthusiastic they are, the team that they're going to assign and hopefully stick with. But it's what they bring as far as their enthusiasm for the project and what homework they've done.
And Bob, you're spot on. I just got back from Chicago. I had 3 people touring the plant. One company brought 11 people. One company brought 1. And this was yesterday. So, and you get an idea how bad they want it, and it's kind of interesting to see that enthusiasm. And then they point things out, and you can tell, wow, this guy's on top of it, or she's awesome. She sees every little detail there is. And that's what I want doing my job. It's a big deal seeing them live.
Yeah, I mean, speaking very generally, that enthusiasm and involvement that they show early on may be indicative of the enthusiasm and involvement they'll have if they're selected.
It's definitely something to keep in mind when we're going through these.
Okay.
One other question I have, just, we said 4 buildings. Is there a greenfield site? Is that an alternative? Because these 4 buildings, none of them may make sense when we're all said and done. And you're asking them to pick between 4 vegetables where maybe a fruit's the best thing. I'm not sure if there's opportunity to look at just a greenfield site somewhere, or a brownfield site. In other words, an undeveloped site.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I can only assume that looking at town property and other sites, perhaps it already been done.
Go ahead, Scott.
So the reason the site selection was somewhat limited is the town went through a pretty exhaustive process of searching for properties available for a fire station, which, while it's a completely different use, the goal is also to be centrally located and accessible to the residents. And the parcels, you saw what we ended up with, which is essentially one parcel. So we didn't think it was worth much value added to have another consultant go through that same process of searching out other parcels for either purchase or ones that the town owns that would be a viable municipal use.
Scott, did we consider knocking down any of these buildings as a viable option?
For the fire station, the buildings that were available at the time were either occupied, like Town Hall, White Cliffs, which we're not knocking down, the existing fire station, which is occupied. So yeah, there was consideration for demolition of private parcels that were possibly viable, available, but nothing came to fruit other than the Pierce gas station, the old Pierce gas station, which actually was demolished.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know, like, if someone says, and I'm just throwing this out there, I've done this hundreds of times, okay? And for example, the existing town hall where they are now, and I'm not saying this is an option we should pursue, but we say, hey, you go and you work out of the real old town hall, that's sitting there by CVS, demolish what was at once a school building, and then put up a new town hall. Because sometimes that's less expensive than trying to renovate something when you don't have the floor heights, you're jerry-rigging elevators, the ramps go forever. There's a lot of cost in trying to meet the energy code of a new existing building. How do you put insulation, and then the brick starts falling apart because it never had moisture barrier on one side of it. There's crazy things that happen when you try to fix up a building, where sometimes it sounds shameful, but knocking it down and building it from scratch can be often much less expensive and more efficient. And I'm not saying we should do that, but it's certainly something I would consider somehow, some way.
Yep.
That's absolutely one of the considerations. I don't see any mechanism where the old fire station could be converted as a structure to a town hall. That would be a demo and a reconstruction, and likely the same thing on the existing town hall property. Former West Main Street is quite a bit different, as is White Cliffs. But yeah, Dario, that's part of that feasibility process. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Sean, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's the state that 4 West Main Street is in, with the build outs that were done by previous tenants. There's just not an option to temporarily move town hall there to demo the current town hall. You'd have to spend a bunch of money doing renos there before you could
Perfect.
make that happen.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Is there anything else anyone wants to go over today? Otherwise, I will If anyone has a motion to adjourn,
I'll make a
Aye.
motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
I second.
Okay, roll call vote. Linda,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Dario,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes,
And
thank you
Aaron,
all
I'm
very much.
driving by your house in about 2 minutes.
Hey, Bob, before the Zoom cuts out, do you want me to email my notes to you, to who?
Yeah, why don't you send them to me?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.